The music industry is dead, and I can prove it. Many of the well-known recording studios across the world have closed. Music sales are still down, and ticket prices for concerts are sky high. Today we have with us John Campos, the owner of One Mind Music, a music production company, and an engineer based in New York. With over 150 song and album credits, Campos has worked with a wide range of artists and companies, including Atlantic Records, RCA Records, and more. He survived the music industry implosion. Has anyone else? Today we discuss that and more here on Real Brave Live. Turns out the Record Plant, an iconic Los Angeles recording studio that spawned more hits and Grammy Award-winning music than any other studio in the world, is closing its doors. So what does this mean for music studios across America, across the world? Well, we've got a lot to talk about, and we've got a special guest today. We are missing one person, so I can't do my very famous Huron. So we'll just get going. We've got John Campos, a very good friend of mine I've known for,
long time.
33 years. And he's with us today. And of course, we got the very handsome, very capable, very talented Brian. Hello, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Hi.
So, John, welcome to this thing. You've seen many iterations of my life. This is just another iteration of an iteration.
Very true. And you found me via the Yellow Pages.
Yeah. So, quick story. 96.
Yes.
No, so I guess it's less than 30 years. But 1996, we were looking for a producer, and I went through the Yellow Pages. Remember that, Brian? The Yellow Pages?
Yes.
So what you do is you open it. You get this book dropped off. It's like a brick. Right? It gets dropped off your door once a year. You open it up, and there's thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of phone numbers in there, right? Today, they call that the internet.
Yes.
But I picked that up, and Powerhouse Entertainment Group in recording studios was there. He was the first one to call me back, and here we are.
It's important to call people back.
It is. He never called me back after that, though. Once he got my money...
Right.
You famously just had we had an answering machine going during sessions, and then people would be like, "John, call me back."
Wait a second. The best part of this is once we were recording, after a while you were recording. I was sitting on the couch, and you guys were engineering and recording. So it's like, shit, this is awesome.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about how the music industry has changed. You had you had an investor that helped you open your first place. It was in Astoria, New York. It was a cool little spot. It was right in the middle of everything there. And
did a lot of, actually, I feel, really excellent work there. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's kind of the advent of where we are now, though, because I was a little ahead of the curve in that, big studios were too expensive for people to actually go and do something good because you got to spend hours and mix it. You're talking $5,000, $10,000, $15,000.
Yeah.
Where I kind of came in as a small studio and people could afford to work with me, and I could pay my rent, and we did stuff.
You did a lot of stuff. You were working many hours a week, including with stuff that we did together. And you had doing like a gig like that where you had a studio, right? This is during the high times. This is during the 90s when the CDs were still being sold. You can go to disc makers and get something pretty cheap, not too expensive, and get it like a decent product.
Mm-hmm.
So you had great bands going to you and not so great bands, but they were all paying the same price, I hope, right? If not more.
Well, the other thing is the studio was an offshoot, so I've through the years mentioned Brett Riley. Brett Riley had some success, and I wound up producing his record for A&M Records, which, they gave me like $30,000 to do that. That was kind of the seed money, and then I got an investor as well to build the studio from nothing. So that's an example of being in the big times and able to make like $30,000 in one shot.
Yeah.
which those days are kind of over a little bit.
Yeah, so we pivot there. So if you look at, and I'll post this on the broadcast, but there we have this graph here, the global music industry turnover from 1970 to 2009. So like in the 90s, you could see that it was absolutely humming. It was the highest point in CD sales and in record sales, and that helped even, John's business, right, and me as a musician back then being able to do that. But at some point in 2000, getting up to between 2000 and 2009, you could see a sharp drop off. Did you feel that in your business too, as far as like the industry changing?
For me, no, because again, I was on the outskirts of it. So I actually had a niche kind of following where people like yourself, other people that wanted to produce their records and do it themselves, kind of not have to answer to a corporate entity, would come to me. It's almost it's the same thing now in a weird way for me, in that the pandemic kind of like leveled music in terms of its production, except for people at home. And then people at home want to have someone to help them mix or, sweeten what they've done. So I've done better in the past 4 years than I've ever done in my entire career. It's crazy.
Wow. But what about, so when the streaming empire started to come into play, did you feel that there was a shift? Or is that didn't?
Well, here's the thing, Dan, is that I kind of parallel this to kind of videotape. So in 2023, I think the music business, the revenue was $28 billion.
Sure.
In 2009, it was about half of that.
Right.
So here's the thing. Who's making the money, though? The thing is the people who are making money are different. So if you're a session guitarist now, you're not working. If you're a mix engineer, you're not really working. You're not working at the highest level. So if you're a recording studio, like a big budget studio, you're out of business now because everyone has a laptop and they can sit home. And you know what? Billie Eilish proved that you can have a Grammy-nominated record done in your bedroom.
Sure.
So that's the thing, is it's not so much that the music industry's dying. Certain people, like Blockbuster, had video cassettes, but as soon as we had streaming, that industry died. So you had, 50,000 people working for Blockbuster who were out of business. And it's kind of the same thing we're seeing with this. Now, I feel that there's always, there's people that profit, and there's definitely some criminality in the new platform. And I say that because they found on Spotify, there's one man who has 650 aliases, and what he does is he makes 31-second songs, and he puts them out on Spotify branded playlists, and he has more streams than anybody in the history of music. He has 15 billion streams.
Who is this schmuck?
I swear to God, this is true. And he is in Sweden, so there's the thought that this is a Spotify executive who's gaming the system. So it's out there. If you look around, you'll find this was documented by a journalist. And also, if you follow Rick Beato, he's been big on following this. So there are people gaming Spotify.
Oh, Johan Rohr.
Yes, thank you.
Revenues generated by Rohr is 15 billion streams of Spotify, underlying the profitability streaming for artists.
Now, granted, here's the thing. So Spotify works in that what happens is all the money goes into a pool. If someone starts pulling out 15 billion streams, you know who gets screwed? All the other artists.
Right.
Who are trying to share that money. So there's the downside. There's like that criminal element. I had to say it's always been part of music.
It's always been part of it, though. You telling me there's that one guy in the back room with a cigar going, "You got a hit over there? What are you telling me? You got a hit?"
This is Dan's favorite voice to do, by the way. This
Yes.
character is Dan's favorite character.
Listen,
too.
you got a hit out of there or what?
So my question for you, John, is I was thinking about this recently because in some ways being a casual music fan has never been better than it is right now. You know, I remember being a kid and saving money, going to the local record store and having them special order me something that I read about in a magazine someplace. I get it delivered to me and it might suck, but I'm out $20, so that's the way the industry worked. Whereas now
Right.
Spotify with streaming, you can go on there, you can find anything. So it's sort of the best of times for the listener in some ways. But is
Yes.
this the worst of times ever for musicians? Like, has there ever been a time when the musician has been a less important piece in the puzzle? Because it seems to me like unless you are top 1% of musicians, you're making considerably less money than you would have at almost any other point in the modern recording industry from the 60s onward.
You know, well, here's the thing: so you actually bring up a good point. So, in some ways, and let me just preface this: anything that I say, I don't want to hold Dan responsible for because I never know what I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
so,
okay. You can drop as many F-bombs as you want. This is we've actually.
no. Well, here's the
F-bomb.
thing: you bring up
We've
a
let the
point
F-bomb
where.
free.
Here's the thing. So back in the day, right? If you wanted a record, say I wanted a record and I was like 11 years old, I had to save my money. I had to plan to go get this thing. Mm-hmm. There was value attached to my purchase. Whereas now, there's kind of no value attached to it. You can have anything you want whenever you want it at no cost to you. So what does that do? That diminishes the value of music pretty much.
Yeah.
And in some ways, on the opposite end of this, so when you're a musician, used to be that you had to learn how to play an instrument. You had to dedicate time out of your life. You had to invest in buying an instrument. You had to make a concerted effort to learn what you do, Dan, which is teach people, so that there was a price to pay for you learning this skill. Whereas now, you can go into Logic and hit a button, and there's no value attached to you creating the music because you didn't have to suffer to make that music. So I feel like, and on both those fronts, the devaluation of artistry and of the music business itself is kind of what's hurting us. And this is why musicians have a harder time making money because they're not valued as much as they used to be. Now, granted, on the technical end, I watch YouTube all day and there are guitarists that I watch and I'm like, you know what? Let me just shut this down because I suck. I'll never be nearly as good as them. And they're out there, so they're bringing music to a new level. But for me and for most people, it's kind of like, you know, your eyes glaze over, you go to the next thing. So there's less value in any of this. And I don't know how we bring that value back. I'm not sure.
I love everything you just said. The value portion of that too is very well said. I think we've tried to say something similar before, and I don't think we got there.
And I think what you do in terms of what you've built there, I don't think that will ever go away. I think people now this is my only hope is that there will be a renaissance in the appreciation of giving artists their due, and maybe there'll be a backlash against streaming, and maybe people will want to actually own the art again. I don't know.
So I have some thoughts about that. You know, I think that the answer to a lot of this falls into very small niches. Like, for instance, if you grew up like I did, going to punk shows at VFW halls, the interaction with bands was very different. It wasn't this like you go to these arenas and watch these people on. No, the guy was standing 5 feet from you, sweating all over you. You'd give him $5 at the end of the show, and he'd give you his 7-inch. And you probably had a record player that your mom has that maybe didn't work that well, but you wanted to support the economy that they were participating in. You bought a shirt from them, you bought this for them. You put a sticker in your car, your guitar, whatever it was, and it was word of mouth. And those bands didn't make a ton of money, but you can still do that level now, and you can even level that up a little bit. There are plenty of bands that have Patreons where every month you get exclusive demos or whatever it is, or they have when they tour, they have VIP packages where you can meet the band. So I think part of it falls on the musician to be able to figure out what their fan base wants and how to connect with them, how to make that $5 7-inch sale in 2024. Part of that is on the band, and part of that has to be on the listeners wanting to do that also. One of the things I always tell my students when they're here, I have one girl who's obsessed with Taylor Swift, and she owns like every Taylor Swift piece of vinyl that there is. And I said, that's great, because when you buy from an artist a piece of vinyl, it goes to their bottom line so much more than a stream does. But I said to her, don't just buy Taylor Swift, right? Yeah. Go find an artist that needs your money and buy their record and be a passionate supporter of them. So I think that there is a way, if the bands can cultivate that small, passionate fan base, and then if the listener can realize the value of being that piece for the band, of being a patron, in other words.
That's excellent. There's recently, in the past 3 weeks, there was Exodus's the band Exodus. Mm-hmm. Jack Gibson was talking about, I think he's the bassist, he was talking about how he's a T-shirt salesman now.
Right.
I'm not a musician, he's saying. There is no music business anymore because all I do is fucking sell T-shirts. That's how I make my money.
Right.
So let's take a step back again. In the year 2000, John and I recorded a record for this band that I was in. I put out thousands of CDs. I ended up going to a place I was working at the time, and this is where I thought things were changing. And I gave it to somebody that wanted it, and I was like, "Oh, it's $10." She's like, "Oh, I wanted to rip it and put it on my computer." I was like, "No, this is how I make money." She's like, "Yeah, I don't want to buy it. Let me know where the link is online." And I was like, "Oh, what happened?" So there's nothing I could sell. Then you got, I think, the streaming portion, John, is where the musicians, there's a future there. Right, the owner of Spotify is saying, I want every musician on here to be able, who's serious, to earn $50,000 a year of an income from Spotify. He hasn't quite gotten there yet. I think that future is great, because I would have killed for that 15, 20 years ago. That's why I don't play anymore, because there was no way to make money. I'm not gonna, be on it. I did the what's that when you're on a subway and you're playing
busking?
I did busking. I made $20 an hour doing that. I don't want to fucking do that anymore.
We've all played the Acme Underground at 2 a.m.
Yes, Sunday night.
Yeah.
I don't. The Spiral. I don't want to do that anymore. And it's definitely taken a turn. I don't know. From our point of view, John, just to kind of bring it to today's standards, we create bands here for the kids.
Yes.
Now, School of Rock does that, and kind of has made it like the standard, and we do that. We do that here too. We have a couple of actually some really interesting bands. But there's from my perspective, there's not as much as that going on in garages anymore.
Right.
Necessarily. And there probably are, but it's like you got these music schools creating bands. So we are an integral part of musicians' lives, I think, moving forward. But there's not much of a future for music if there's no way to make money. And I don't know how we do that unless you're touring all the time. Brian's still playing out.
Yeah, but I'm playing out in cover bands that I'm in because my friends are in them. I write music every day, but I don't know where I would get a gig as a 42-year-old man with original songs. I don't know where that would happen.
You don't put that on your resume?
No, I don't. No.
That's one of the reasons why I almost didn't hire you. Oh, he's a playing musician.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, listen, I have some thoughts about those issues. So this is a super complex set of issues that result in where we're at today. So now we're just talking about dance streaming. So probably unbeknownst to people is that, and I'm part of the NARIS lobbying committee that lobbies our representatives in Congress regarding the paying out of royalties. Before the internet, royalties were based upon a legislative copyright act. So that if you got played on radio, you got 10 cents a minute for your song. And then you you kind of made bonuses depending on how big the song became. You also got publishing royalties if you owned the publishing, and you got mechanical royalties for the sale of the actual physical recording. What happened is, and this is what's always puzzled me, the delivery system changed. It went from being transported via the airwaves now into a cable connection or a wired connection to your computer, and now wireless. But just because the delivery system changed doesn't mean that the amount paid should have changed. And what happened is you had people like whoever started Spotify realizing, wow, I can build a company with actually like not having to buy any product.
Right.
I can build a foundational powerhouse of a company without having to invest in any of the product that I'm going to be giving these people.
Yeah,
whereas radio
labels,
stations,
right, the traditional label is gone because they're now the
yes,
biggest
100%.
record label in the world. They're the biggest record label in the world.
But here's the thing, legislation regarding this never caught up. No one ever said, you know
Shocker.
what? Yes, I know. You probably know more than I because I've seen you down in Washington. I haven't gone that far yet.
Yeah. But nothing moves very quickly there, including the people.
Right.
Because we're all old.
The thing is that unfortunately market forces will always dictate what's happening. The other thing, and what I'll say is, and this is not a diss on musicians, but you know what succeeds? Good music.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are not making good music. Honestly. I mean, even good, listen, it's a wild west out there in terms that if you are, say you're like the next, I don't know, the next Nirvana, and you have something that is just undeniably it just does something for the masses, it will find its way. That's right. What's wacky about right now.
I know. Have you done any of the new R&B hip hop stuff with anyone where it's like the one guy kind of singing two notes and an auto tune, and then someone?
Of course.
So
hell yeah.
So what's your perception of that? Is that good music? Because I talked to my 13-year-old son, and he's like, "Oh, I love Kanye, I love Drake, I love all these guys," and I listen to it going.
Well, here's the thing.
I don't know.
Some of this is generational. Obviously, yes. We come from a different generation, and we come from a different ethic because we're musicians. So when someone is auto-tuned and like, but on the other hand, listen, I always go back to the 50s when all of a sudden, think of what happened before the 50s. Music in the 30s and 40s was very harmonically rich, was very sophisticated. You had a lot of noir kind of compositions. You had insanely complex harmony going on. And then the 50s come out, and it's a complete rebellion against that. And it's 1-4-5 for the next 10 years.
Right.
And a lot of people at the time said, you know what? That music sucks. It's not complex like what we were doing over here. But you know what? They pissed a lot of people off. And the thing is, music is art. So sometimes taking a turd on a stool to piss people off, music does the same thing. It's a way to express your anger, your whatever you want to express. Now, the thing is a lot of people are expressing it in a way that it really sounds undiscernible from each other because of the use of the same tools. But there are people that come out of that really are kind of geniuses and will find their way out of it. Yeah. It's just that we have 10 million people putting out singles every day on Spotify. 999,000 of them are not going to succeed.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting that you put it in the terms of like, the simplification of music from the 50s or from the pre-rock and roll to rock and roll now. My question is, are we going to get to a point where it's so simplistic it is just like a single note with a single backbeat behind it?
We may.
We're getting close to that in some ways.
Well, you know what that's going to do? Everything is cyclical. Once we get to one note, someone's going to go, you know what? I can't take listening to that one note anymore. And they're going to create something, and someone's going to follow it. And I still work with a lot of young people, and I'm encouraged because I'm working with this guitar player who's like 22, and he comes in, and I forget what he came in and he played Dear Prudence on the guitar. I was like, holy damn, that was good. I mean, I struggle to play that. I've been playing 30 years. And he's like, I love the Beatles. I'm putting together this. And I'm like, you know what? God bless you. So I see a renaissance coming from younger people that are not into this one note thing. They want more. They want to play the music. They want to be a part of it. So it's an endless cyclical movement. Think of hair bands right before Nirvana. It was how glammy and how ridiculous. How many ways can you play a G chord and dance around in spandex? And then this guy comes out and he's like, there's a whole new genre of music that disappears everybody. It's crazy. It's going to happen again.
It's and to that point, like with the record plant closing in Hollywood and others, so many. There's not many left, right?
Yes.
These all-time best-selling records were recorded like at studios like this. Like we said, like the Eagles. By the way, Brian hates the Eagles, so in case you want. It's there.
Your title.
Okay. Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction was recorded there. Fleetwood Mac. You like Fleetwood Mac at least?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay. Fleetwood Mac. Rumors, among many others, were recorded. So, do you think with technology that we have today, John, that we can emulate the recordings of those times? We're not going to be able, like, this place had shackles for like raunchy sex, right. I guess, and rooms, like, so you're obviously not doing that because you're in your house, I believe. I hope. But how do you emulate the sounds? Let's just stick with that because the culture's not necessarily coming back. Like the nonstop partying, the spandex, the Motley Crues of the world. I'm sure it exists to some extent, but you're not going to have that experience of going to the recording studio in the future and like sitting there and the thousands of studios across the world that do this. So how do you emulate those types of sounds with the new technology we have today?
All right. Well, this is another complicated question. And I say that because the level of quality in your recording, it's subjective to what people feel things sound good as. The argument that I'm hearing from you right now, I'm not saying it's necessarily your personal argument, but most of the people that are saying that kind of thing, how will we these are older people that remember that technology. Right. The younger people, digital music recording has come a long way. Like, you can make something sounding even better than what we did in the past. And some of that it's individualistic. You have to know what you're doing. There are a lot of old records that I put on that were done in 24-track tape with, Neumann mics, and I think it sounds kind of crappy. So it depends. Like, you can have John Lennon singing into a cassette and it's magic, and you could have another band recording at the record plant and doesn't sound that great. Yeah. So some of these things are subjective. In terms of the tools we have right now, we've never had more amazing tools to make music. Well, and if you can't make something sound good, something wrong with you.
Yeah, and not only that, but what Dan was saying about these classic studios, like I bought for a couple $100s a few years ago a set of plugins that are the Abbey Road plugins. I have the Abbey Road Echo Chamber plugin. I have the automatic double tracker from Abbey Road plugin. I have it too. Sounds amazing. Yeah, it sounds. I'm sure the real one might sound better, but I'll never be able to afford or know that. A friend of mine just bought. They have a new pack that gives you the drum room from Sound City. You put your drums into this, and it emulates the drum room of Sound City in Los Angeles. And if we can do those things at home, for a fraction of the cost of going to sound. I mean, like, something is lost. I am not advocating for people making records without other musicians and all of that, but the world is changing, and if we can get the Sound City sound in Oakland, New Jersey,
yes,
that's a pretty awesome
well, you know
thing.
what's I'll tell you what has changed, and this probably has to do more with how things come out. And so back in the day, and I know because I had an 8-track machine, I had a 16-track machine, I worked on 24-track machines.
ADAT.
There's something to be said about having to limit your choices and make choices as you go, as opposed to having unlimited tracks where, so you're not really making creative choices. You're leaving it all to the end. And then it's like, so I think some of the genius, listen, there are billions of recordings. We're listing the ones that we think sound amazing. But boy, there are a lot of ones out there that were done in those same studios that sound like crap.
Yeah.
And the same thing applies today. You can do a digital recording. I think there's this song, I think it's called Closer by, it's a digital recording, and a friend of mine mastered the recording at, his name is Chris Geringer.
Yeah.
And he played this thing for me in his mastering studio, and I was like, "Oh my God, that sounds amazing." He's like, "Dude, it was done in Logic. It was done with plugins, and they had some outboard." And I was like, "Sounds as good as anything I've heard." So, listen, can we replicate what has been done in the past? I have a tape machine right here. I could throw it to tape. Some people want that sound. Now, with that sound, you know what comes? Comes a lot of noise, comes some biasing on the high end. If you want that, it gives you a feel, which I understand. So if I'm doing something what I call, quote unquote, lo-fi, strokes-ish, I send it to tape and it fits perfectly. But if I'm doing something that I want no noise in and I want completely clean, doesn't work so well. See, the thing is when they created tape, they thought they were creating the most transparent recording device they could. That's what they did. They weren't intending for it to have a sound. The tape machine itself, they didn't think about it so much. Now you had people like Bob Clearmountain who would set like the azimuth and the zenith on the recorder, but no one was really doing that. You basically went in, you picked the tape, and if you didn't want to spend tape, you taped over something. I mean, it was crazy.
You're still
not to mention all the hours that you lost of your life rewinding shit.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I want to skip over tape. I want to talk about ADAT real quick.
The worst format.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So John
worst.
recorded a lot of the beginner stuff and I still have all the tapes. I have no idea if they work. Who knows, right? Will they work, Don? John, I have no idea.
But you know what? Your record sounds good.
Yeah.
I mean,
the last one we did sounds great. The other ones sound a little dated, but the last one sounds amazing still. But on ADAT, we did that in 2000.
Yes. That was, again, that was the mid-level. That's when the mid-level people all could buy a recorder for $2-3 grand, and now you had a million little studios popping up.
Yeah. And you had, I think, did you have a U87 back then or no?
I didn't. We did everything through, I think I had an AKG 4050, a 40 something else. I had like the $700 mic.
It's still, I mean, you made the vocals sound good because you put it through like the Jeff Buckley processor or whatever.
Yes. Well, we compressed the hell out of everything.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember you actually using the compressor on, because I know like I played one or two rhythm things or some and you were engineering and you were like, let's compress this.
Yes.
And it sounds great.
Yeah.
Listen, things sound dated when they're recorded 20 years ago. You can tell when you're listening to like some audio. The minute you hear something from the 60s, you know it. There's an EQ kind of curve that just goes 60s.
Yeah.
And in the 70s, that kind of, it expanded, but we had very dead sounding studios. So everything sounds a little boom, ding, boom. It wasn't, except for Zeppelin, which was all room. But like, all those Eagle records, the drums, they sounded like they were recorded in like my padded room.
Right.
They're very dead. And then the 80s, the digital thing started happening. Music really sounded bad for quite a while. And then I think in the last 15 years, they've really come a long way in making digital, I'm going to say, and dare I say, almost warm sounding. Like with a good processor, using some of these saturated plugins, you're getting stuff that sounds like, what the older people look for is that tape feel. Like, okay, yeah, we got that feel again.
Well, it just seems to me like we're getting better at faking it, right? Like it's
Yes.
never going to really be the warmth of that. We can just fake the warmth in a way that makes sense. And guys like me get off on that stuff.
But here's the thing, and I've done a lot of thought about this. Is it fake or not? I mean, both of it's electricity. It's both. It's in the electronic medium. If they've been able to actually duplicate electronically a signal, I guarantee, even me, when people A/B shit to me, I can't tell the difference. And I've been doing this a long time.
It's funny that you put it that simply. I have a drummer friend who gets really mad whenever he goes to see a band and there's no amps. He'll say, "Push some air, goddammit," because to him it's like it's all about just pushing air. That's what music is. And what you're saying is that recording is just electricity, right?
It is.
If you bring it down to those simple levels, then yeah, I guess it's not faking it. That's a great point.
It's magnetism and electricity. Now, yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing: when the guitar plug-in plays through your speaker, it's pushing air. So where does it matter where the air gets pushed? Does it matter before or after? And can you even tell? So that's the question. Can you even tell? I can't tell. So
I think most people who say they can tell are full of shit, to be honest with you.
yes.
Well,
there are lots of bands that will still go out there with amps behind them, but are not using those amps. They're
Right.
there for the aesthetic purpose of the people in the audience saying, "Look at that Marshall amp, man!"
Sucks.
But
All right, wait. So I have a real life example, and I don't know if any of you guys have seen Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
not live.
Okay, so they're that Christmas show.
Yeah.
So Bob Kinkle, I know him. I was in a band with him. He's the kind of the head arranger and the keyboard and producer of that. When they go on the road, now they have Marshall stacks that are just for looks.
Yeah.
But everything is a plug-in that gets sent to the guy front of house, and it's just way more easier for them.
I
They
guess.
bring the rack,
Yeah.
and they bring the fake amps and the heads, and everything's in ear, and that's it. And so I've seen them live. I can't tell. And I've seen Sabbath live. You know what I'm saying? So
All Z. Yeah, what do you think about that? I mean, it just pisses me off, but I guess it's just the new world, and I just have to deal with it. I just want people to lug the goddamn amps, Brian. I had to do it.
There's still someone lugging the amps just for no purpose now, which is worse in some ways.
It's really worse.
In some way, worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand. I mean, look, if you play in any level of band, you have had your gear die on you, and it sucks when the PA goes or your amp tubes blow or whatever it is. So
yes.
if you can mitigate those things, and just you have less points of failure from the perspective of the guy who's trying to make the music on stage, I totally understand the argument for wanting
100%. You know why? Because how many times have you seen a band with a guitarist throughout the show? The guitar's getting louder and louder and louder. Like some people, and then all of a sudden it's like it's pushing you back. It's too loud. It's like I fall nowhere
Every one
on
of my bands.
I think, you know who cares about this? Guitar players, people who will love amps. I love amps, but I also love plugins. I mean, they both have their place. It's not one and or the other, and I think that's what people have to get kind of on. This whole thing about, well, it was better back then. No, it wasn't. We can still do just as good stuff. It depends who's doing it.
John famously moved from, like in our circle, he moved from the ADATs, right? He's got this business.
Yes.
He's
ADATs.
Then he went to the Mackie. What was that Mackie system?
Yes. How much money I wasted. It's not funny.
So you went to that Mackie system, and then I remember I bought the DigiDesign, the 002 back in like the early whatever, and I told him about it, and he's like, "You're going to be in the box, huh?" And that's still a discussion today, being in the
Yes.
out of the box. But as a musician, and you're wanting to make some money, you want to keep your costs down. Everything's in the freaking box because I bought a Manly limiter for like $6,000. I bought a couple other out of the box things. I spent like $15,000 on out of the box things. I still don't have everything I need.
Right.
So it's impossible. It's impossible to get there.
And that stuff may not play well with your computer now. Like that was not made for a modern recording interface.
Yeah.
So you have all this gear that hopefully will work, and if you put enough time and effort in, it will work. But the same person buys a $100 plugin or a $10 plugin and can get real close to that.
Yeah.
You know, it's a real conversation to have.
So and that's
so Dan, after we did some of the last songs that you did, we did You in the Box, and then I decided, you know what? I'm going to go outside of the box.
Oh, really?
And I got a summing amp, and I have an SSL Bus Plus. I have a Manly ELOP. I have some EQs. So now when I'm mixing, I go into the summing amp, and then out into a 2-track where all of my outboard is. And it's not so much that it makes me feel better. And it makes it easier for me to get where I want to go. But that's probably because of my background.
Right.
So if I were to play two different mixes from me, we might not even hear the difference. But it just makes me feel better. So I feel like I get a better product because I'm feeling better about what I'm doing. I feel like when I compress it with the Bus Plus, in my mind, I feel like I hear it a little differently. I don't know if I actually am, but it's working for me. So whatever. There's that guy, Andrew, I forget his name, who works completely in the box. He does like all the Chili Pepper records, and these things sound amazing, and they're done in the box. So it's all personal. I think in all of this, whether or not you're making money in music, I'll give you an example. Now you know me, Dan. I'll come over and wash dishes, and restring your guitar to make some money. That's what I do.
That's what you
in order. So this year, I've worked as an engineer. I've worked as a producer. I've gone out and played about 12 shows live on guitar.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw
with
you
some
playing
people.
live. Yeah, is that that country band or
Yes,
was it?
I just played in the pit for a theater company that did Pippin over, which was challenging for me because it's show tune music.
I do that sometimes, and that is there is no better like humbling experience than to be handed a book of a Broadway play.
Yeah, like you read
Right.
a chart.
Read it.
100%.
It is tough to do. I do it on bass.
And I've had people that want to learn about music. I've had them come in. They wanted to pay me. So I will do whatever it takes to make an income in this. And that's kind of, I think, if you're a musician and you're a guitar player and you just want to wait for people to hire you to play guitar, it ain't going to work. You have to be doing a whole bunch of different things. And I'm sure in your business, you have to be able to pivot. Something's not happening. Pandemic happens. I better create an online platform. Like you have no choice.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that goes back to what we were saying is like, how does the music industry dead? How does a musician make money? And it still comes back to the fact that you have to be a hustler no matter what, because there is no there's no vertical movement in a thing like this. I like the idea of Spotify, right? And I'll clarify this for a second. Mm-hmm. The CEO saying every single person in my mind will make a salary through this. I like that idea. I like the idea of that. Is that going to actually work? Probably not. I don't see how the process there, because it's just there's no income that's been sustainable. Even the streaming networks in and of themselves, they're not. This is the first time, I think, this past quarter that Spotify actually made money, but it's because they laid off like thousands of people.
Right.
Yeah. So, and from a business point of view, I understand the need for layoffs. Like, I get that, but they posted a profit because they laid off people, and that's why people hate corporations, because of that, because the perception is bad. I don't know. Apple doesn't give a crap about their product anymore. Like, I know Steve Jobs saved the music industry by putting music in an iPod, but it also destroyed the music industry because the industry didn't keep up fast enough. So you've got this opportunity of a lifetime to use social media, and John, you're on there. How many followers do you have on Instagram now?
19,000.
Crazy.
Wow.
But I've been doing this for 10 years, though. It's, Yeah,
you're constantly on there ripping guitar solos, but you have an opportunity, if you understand like how to use it, to get out there a little bit. And when I say out there, all I'm saying is, like, yes, you potentially could get some of your music out there, but we don't need more music on in our ears being blasted. And there's some musicians out there putting out ads on Instagram for their show. Like, I don't need to see that. Like, I'm not going to go see your band because I don't know you.
Right.
So you're using this improperly. So you think...
Well, let me bring you back to your question, though, because here's the thing, is that two things can be true at the same time, and we have to accept the cognitive dissonance of, yes, the music industry is dead. It's dead for certain people, but it's not dead for other people. And what it is it's a learning curve to accept the new paradigm that we're in and then move toward it. If you're going to just sit here and we're going to yell at clouds and go, yeah, then it's dead for you. But if you accept it and you try to, like, we didn't talk about AI. I've been using AI for 20 years. The first time I used a drum machine, that's artificial intelligence. Didn't kill drummers, just made it easier to make people. It has a sound. But I think the AI that's damaging is when you're stealing someone's likeness. That's damaging. Yeah. But having an EQ look at your mix and give you suggestions on how it could be better, more to it. Give me more. Want more. I want to hear what. I want that kind of stuff.
Okay. So, yeah, and this is the last part of the discussion I want to get to, which was, is AI going to be part of the destruction of music for musicians, simply because you can make a whole song without understanding how to create anything, understanding what a 1-4-5 progression is? You can do that, right? And GarageBand that made that very easy. All you got to do is push a button and it does it for you. You could sing over it. You can release it. It sucks. Great. And then there's some good ones too. But AI, from what I've seen, I don't know if you've been playing with it.
I have.
Yeah, I mean it's not good. It's not great yet, but it's starting to get good. Like, there's some very interesting things happening, and I wanted to hear your take on it.
I kind of look at it as a Casio keyboard. So, remember, like, you didn't have to know how to play any music. You could walk into Sam Ash. You could go over to the keyboard and you'd hit a button and it would go bossa nova and it would go doom da doom da doom da doom. It would do all this shit for you. Didn't make you like it necessarily anymore. So my daughter has kind of educated me on this. She sends me tons and tons of AI tracks. And honestly, most of them fall under what I'm going to call humorous. Like, they're ridiculous. It's ridiculous lyrics. It's ridiculous music. It really hasn't, I mean, I can tell it's AI. AI really, until it becomes really what that means, is just emulating what it's been programmed to listen to. So, here's the thing. What people don't calculate about the human race is there are 8. I don't want to f-bomb, but there are 7 billion individual humans on this planet. and one of them could be listening to Bach and Black Sabbath and I don't know, Tiny Tim, and come up with something completely unique. And I don't think that that's ever going to be the case with a computer. It's always going to be based on what it's heard, and it's not going to be able to take that and break it into completely uncharted territory, because we have 7 billion people and only one of them needs to do that.
Here's my fear with AI, and it's not, I mean, look, I have my overarching fears of AI, taking over the world, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Terminator.
I've read, I've seen Terminator. I've read Philip K. Dick books. I'm aware of this stuff, right? But my thing is, the guy who might be making that groundbreaking Tiny Tim Bach Black Sabbath collaboration, he might be paying his bills by doing commercial jingles. But when those gigs go away because AI is there, that guy might have to put down his guitar because he can no longer make a living doing the boring stuff to get to the exciting stuff. And that's where my fear comes in, is just that, are we eliminating the day jobs in music that will bankroll the genius innovation down the road? That's my fear with it.
Yeah, and to that point, I think even just seeing the everyday here, Brian, and you're in the classroom way more than I am right now. So even the everyday here, from when I last left off, I could tell that there was a drop-off in listening, just strict listening, right? So us growing up, we listened, and that was an escape.
Yeah.
The escape is no longer listening. It's everything else. I don't even want to get into it. So So the escape now is like, all right, well, I don't know what that is, and I'm not really that interested in it because I was never really given that. And then you also take away the fact that school programs are slightly diminished. I'm not going to say they're going to go away because that's way too negative of an outlook, but they've diminished, and we've got places like this that kind of insert ourselves in that. But the bottom line is, there's no CDs, no tapes, not as many records, and the next generation might not need instruments. It's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
Sure.
It's possible.
Sure.
You have to admit, at least it's possible.
But see, that bothers me less than, I have 2 students right now who I'm really struggling with, because they say to me, I have learned all the songs I like. And they know like 5 songs. And like, to me, I have been playing guitar for 30 years. I have not learned every song I like. I could never learn every song. Like,
your vernacular is huge.
Exactly.
She's got 5 songs.
Right.
And that's my issue.
Yeah,
Why can't she expand that?
They're both men, by the way. Sexist Dan Powers over here.
Didn't you say she, by the way?
I did not say she. I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
Awesome.
That sucks. I suck.
Well, listen, I agree with you that AI is going to put a lot of people out of business. I was talking strictly on the artistic, but financially, for sure, it's putting copywriters out of business. It's putting people that write. It's putting, spokespeople out of business. You could just have an AI, talk for you. I mean, it's in that case, technology is painful. There's no way.
You could look at it.
No way.
You said it's like a Casio keyboard. Yesterday, I had to write a letter to a landlord. I did not want to call my lawyer because I didn't want to spend $400 fucking hour. So I uploaded my lease to generative AI. I said, read this for me, and I said, look at this specific. And I said, please write a letter stating X, Y, and Z. It wrote it exactly. I sent it to my lawyer. He's like, looks great. That's all he needed. I said, I'm going to send this to you. Do not charge me. I wrote this. Just look at this really quick, this one passage. And he said, that's fine. It's totally fine. And it's things like that it's going to start replacing that, versus like 15, 20 years ago, I would have to call the attorney. I would have to, I would have to do that stuff because I didn't educate myself on these things, that I didn't have a tool like a Casio keyboard that can hit Bossa Nova. The Bossa Nova button, which in this case was the legal button, and it would generate this letter that it's completely fine and replace my lawyer. So,
these are like societal issues in that do we limit the creation of technology that undoubtedly is hurling us toward our demise, or how do we handle this? That's the question that really The sad thing is that technology is always leaps and bounds ahead of our thought process. So, I mean, listen, when AI hits its full stride, I'm not so much worried about that I'm going to be making less money. I'm worried about the people that are going to be able to hack into my bank account because they have an AI thing that can read my password and just take the money out. Like, it's getting to the point where AI can do shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the humans are still in control. We have to do something about it while we can.
So you feel that the music industry is still a place to make money, but it's not. How do you? I guess how to summarize this conversation in your words? How do you think a musician can make money that's serious about recording and becoming a successful touring professional musician?
Okay, so I think number one is you have to learn a craft. You have to learn the craft, whatever it is you're going to be offering of yourself. There are always going to be people making money in music. There are people making boatloads of money in music right now. The problem is like everything, it's like the people that have the wherewithal to invest big, like say Spotify, where they've created a corporation and now have generated billions, as opposed to people like me and you, Dan, we're on the front lines. We're dealing with people on a personal level, giving them services that they need. As long as the services are still required, and for me, they've been more required now because more and more people are doing this on their own. So, and for me, like mixing or adding guitars to stuff or just giving, a lot of people are, not that they're unwilling, a lot of people want a second opinion about what they're doing. Someone they can trust to go, if you tried this or whatever, they don't have the confidence to put out their own music without having a professional, or even in your case, where, parents want their child to benefit from the brain benefit from learning an instrument. Even if they're not interested in, say, the music part afterwards, just putting them through that routine of learning an instrument, learning music, going into your head, reading music, having a tactile feel of what a note sounds like to be played, the benefit that has on a human being that's incalculable. So I don't think that you'll ever be out of business, because now the thing is how do you reach those people? That's more the question. Is there are people that want that. Now maybe there's less of them, but it's our job to find them. And so far for me, I'm still finding them. Now, who knows? It could all end tomorrow. Because you know how this is. I don't know what I'm doing 2 months from now, but I've been able to do it for like 30 years.
You've been saying that since I met you. I don't know.
It's true.
And you've done very well. You've recorded with some of the best in the world. Chris Geringer is a friend of yours. He's a
yes.
Grammy award winner.
And Dan, you are one. I honestly, and I know a lot of people. You're one of the best singer-songwriters I ever met.
Oh man,
I mean that. I'm not.
That.
So I'm serious. Thing is that. So when we go back to the 90s, the problem is the 90s were rigged in a different way. They were rigged in that managers hired producers to find them bands, and everyone got paid, and the label paid everybody. So if you weren't in that small loop of people, didn't matter how good you were, you weren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And you were good. You guys are great. Those songs are amazing. And, regardless of what kind of financial remuneration you got from it, I still play it, and I'm proud of it.
Oh, no. The Mobius Loop stuff, 100%. And even the couple of the Serene songs are fun to listen to. And
I've never heard
fun.
a single
It's
note
awesome.
Dan has made.
Awesome.
Oh, my goodness.
Never heard one.
I'll have to bring it in, and we'll use it as a coaster.
Wait a second. How about Neil with an A? That you guys. That's a classic. To me, that's a classic record.
And Neil, and we're gonna talk to Neil soon. Neil is amazing because not only has he had a record deal, not only has he traveled all over the world, but he's got like this infectious songwriting capability that is like folksy, yet you can. It's a little bit out there, but you can relate to it. It's always been that way. He's always been on the cusp of that ever since I met him, and he's still doing it. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's true.
There's so many different people. Brian Griffin.
Yes.
Brian Griffin playing with the Black Crowes. Crazy, right?
He was slated to play. He was supposed to open for Aerosmith with them.
Well, that obviously did not.
That's not happening, obviously.
Yeah, but he's playing with somebody else now. I forgot. It's another like great group, and I went to see. I messaged him because I had tickets to see when he was playing with the Black Crowes, and just watching him play and remember like him at the studio, you know, like with you, and we're talking and everyone's smoking cigarettes.
Yes.
It's just amazing to see him achieve that level, and I'm honestly like very happy with how everything has turned out. Like I have no regrets, none of that. My big interest now is, and I say this a lot, is to see the students here on stage, and that's kind of like, it's so fulfilling. I can't describe it. To see the students in this program on stage and on a stage that I love, you know, as a kid.
Yes.
And the ability to express yourself and the ability to become more confident. There's nothing better.
Dude, listen, in my opinion, you're doing life-changing work. And I saw a hint. See, this is why it's good for me to get out and do this. So I did that thing with the local theater, and it was for teens. And you see something that starts out as a mess become something.
Right.
And then you see the look of amazement in the kids' eyes. And it's the same thing when you get an instrument and then you get up on stage and you can perform it. That gives again, these things are immeasurable in terms of what it does to a person,
right,
and what they become, and how it changes their life. Even if they don't go on to do music, there's that feeling of, you know, you're expressing yourself. People are listening. It's in the moment. That you can't put a price on that. So you're doing amazing work with that.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Coming from you, it means a lot. And I someday we'll get down there and see you. I know you're trying to put together a little get together, so hopefully you'll see you really soon.
Yes, a barbecue.
A barbecue.
Yes.
And maybe one of these days I'll start recording again, but probably not. So we'll leave it there. Brian,
you got a song or two left in you. Let's go. Come on.
You know what? We left it on a good note. You texted me 7 years ago, and you're like, "You son of a bitch," and I'm like, I read the text, and it was like, you showed me the Grammy nomination thing.
Yes.
You son of a bitch. So,
you son of a bitch. But you know what? The thing is that we were left off with Brian. Brian's making an amazing living as a musician.
I know. Well, he tried. He did everything like that.
And he's amazing. Again, if you're good at what you do, people will come to you.
He's that Ringo drummer, you know.
Yep. No, one of my best friends is a drummer, and he's played with everybody from the Monkees to Prong to jazz stuff to Broadway stuff to Blue Man Group. Like, if you're good and you hustle, you can make a living.
You can,
but you have to hustle.
You have to hustle. You have to be good. Those two things.
And listen, it was just as hard in 1982 to do the same thing. It was. Maybe there were more opportunities because there were more studios, but there were more people that were. Listen, there are a lot of amazing people. Some of why you get hired doesn't even necessarily have to do with how you play. It may be your personality. It may be that you suck just the right amount. Who knows? I'm not kidding, because, like, you know, I record a lot of people. And like sometimes some people will hire me and they're like, "You're too good for what we're doing. You need to play messy or sloppier." And I'm like, I can only play the way I play. Have someone else do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's
I know.
Why people get hired and how people become successful, it has more to do than just the music itself. It has to do how you are personally, how you fit in with people, if they like you. A lot of this stuff is being popular too. You know, it's like the one thing that I know that I have in terms of audio engineering is when I run a session, I make people feel confident that I know what I'm doing. So they don't know that, like, shit, I just lost 16 tracks of data, and how am I going to get it back while they're having their coffee? And not mention it. And of course, I have the knob that does nothing.
Yeah.
Could you put a little more high end on that? I turn the knob, it does nothing. They're like, oh, that's perfect.
That's amazing. He used to say that a lot. Like, they'll tell me what they want me to do, and then I'll do it, and then I'll just do whatever the fuck I want anyway.
Right,
afterwards.
exactly. Well, that's the famous session bassist Lee Sklar has on all of his basses a switch that does nothing.
Yeah.
His producer switch. When the producer, hey, can you change your tone? Oh, sure. He puts the switch down. Does nothing. But it makes me.
Well, wait. I got to put a caveat to that, though. So that's only the people who know not what the fuck they're doing. Like when we're working together, Dan, and I know you know what you're doing. So we discuss it, and we're like, okay, yes. That's a different thing. When people are hiring you just as an engineer, and they know nothing about what they're doing, why argue?
Yeah.
Here it is. This is it. That's it. You want to make them feel good. And this is how I get repeat customers is they come in, listen, dude, I do melodyning after the fact. They don't know I'm melodyning it. So I don't do it to the point where you hear any actual audible. Now, of course, I would only do that to people that actually have no idea what the hell I'm doing here. Because if you have any idea, then you may have an opinion about it. Usually these people have no opinion. They just want to hear what's going to come out at the back end. And when they're happy, that reflects good on me. They come back. And then as they learn, I'm like, dude, I melodyned your last track. I just want to let you know. And then that's, they're like,
And if they know what that is, they're probably like, oh.
Yes.
Well, we're running out of time here.
All right.
John, I really appreciate you doing this. As we build it, the podcast has built a little bit over the past couple of years, and it's fun to do. It's a distraction. I love watching a little bit.
You guys have your funny moments, man, where I'm like in stitches. I can't.
Yeah, no, I know we're missing Kevin. We should have a Kevin cam here. But
I was thinking of setting up a Kevin cam.
We should have had a Kevin cam. I was gonna draw a little face with a beard.
Yeah, you guys got serious charisma together.
There's some charisma. And we hopefully Brian's not gonna quit anytime soon. He's been trying.
And Brian's awesome.
Well, let's be in touch. Let's talk soon. And for you, the listener viewer, please go to realbraveaudio.com. Follow us on all the socials, and we will see you next week. Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Danny. Thanks, Brian.
It was nice meeting you, John.
Yeah, same. Take care.
All right, let's see.